Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We'll be starting our presentation in just a few moments. As all of you are coming in, I'm going to start with an icebreaker. What is your go-to karaoke song and why? And you can type that into the chat button at the bottom of your screen. And today we have Mary Malone from Innovia Consulting. She's one of our customer success managers. She's going to be presenting on prompting engineering with Copilot. So if you guys have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get those questions answered. And we'll also have a Q&A at the end. And we are recording this, so everyone will get a copy of the recording. I will send that out tomorrow. All right, Mary, go ahead and we'll kick it off.
Well, great. As Angie said, I'm Mary Malone, and on behalf of my colleagues here at Innovia, I am thrilled that you're here for the second of our Coffee and Copilot series. I'm going to make a few references back to the first session, which is available on demand, so that if you feel like you want to catch up a little bit, I'm going to do that for you, but then you can watch the whole session on demand. So I'm going to be talking about Copilot today, and I want to just anchor the conversation with a quick reminder that Copilot is Microsoft's AI, or artificial intelligence tool. It's really tools, since, as Trish pointed out last week, Copilot exists in many Microsoft applications. And I think it's important to know that Microsoft intentionally selected the word Copilot, and I think it's worth discussing why for just a moment. So a Copilot works with a pilot, but the pilot is ultimately responsible for the decisions made with the information that they exchange in the cockpit. And the other part of it is that I like it because it also reminds us, or gives us, the imagery of the co-pilot as another person, and to think about having conversations with another person as you're using Copilot. And I'm going to make a little bit more reference to that later in the presentation. So what I'm going to cover today is a little bit about Copilot and prompts and what that means, some principles of prompt engineering, and then I'm going to share some prompt design strategies. I'll cover some common pitfalls towards the end, but along the way, I'm going to show some interactive examples, and hopefully you'll see some best practices that you might be able to take away and put into your own prompting experience. I'll take questions throughout. If you write them in the chat box, Angie will interrupt me, but I'll save time for questions at the end. And we do ask that when we're done, you'll get a very quick survey that will ask how we're doing with this, and ask you for different topics that you might be interested in us doing webinars about. So again, to anchor the conversation, so for today, I'm going to be using the M365 version of Copilot. If you're not familiar with that or want to see a close thing, the free version of Copilot is available at copilot.microsoft.com, which I've written right up here. It's very similar to this one. Mine is integrated through M365, both to the web and to my work. However, I'm only going to be talking about web answers today. But what I want to do is, I'm speaking today while Trish covered a wide range of topic about the multiple co-pilots that Microsoft has available. I'm really going to be focused on the prompt for it. And then, you can't quite see that, but there is I just want to point out that there is a microphone down here. And while I'm going to be showing text, typed text, it's also possible to use a talk to text option that I really actually love, and would encourage you to see if it would work for you, or for team members that aren't particularly savvy or aren't particularly facile with typing. My husband was a carpenter for many years. He's not a great typist, but when I showed him that he had a microphone that he could use. He hasn't stopped using Copilot. He's kind of a fiend. So the screen that you're going to see when I use it today I'm going to use the notebook option. I'm going to be talking about prompts, which will appear here. And that's the examples that you'll see later in the presentation. Now, what I'm going to ask Angie to do now, though, is to switch quickly. We have a couple of poll questions. If you were here last week, they're going to seem similar, but maybe your answer to the question has changed. So if Angie, if you wouldn't mind asking the couple of questions, we're really interested in finding out how our clients are moving towards using Copilot. So we'll take a minute or so, maybe 30 seconds to answer 2 quick questions. Thanks, Angie.
Okay, I did launch those and we'll get the results in just a few moments.
So Angie, do you think we're ready to move on? Can you tell?
Yeah, I believe so. I think the poll is pretty much complete.
Pretty much everybody's got it. All right, then I'm going to move on while the results are being tabulated. So thank you. Okay, so today, again, talking about Copilots and prompts. So we've talked about what Copilot is. And again, Trish did a wonderful session on that. So the idea is that Copilot interprets a prompt by analyzing what you've written. And it uses natural language processing. So rather than have to program code to get the information, you can question the data. In this case, everything that's sort of out on the web. You can question it with English as the natural language here. Natural language programming kind of bridges the gap between how we communicate or don't do as well communicating as humans, and how computers understand things. And it allows for more intuitive interactions and the gathering of information in a more intuitive way. Now, the model that behind the scenes, after you put your question in, considers things like syntax and semantics and context to provide answers. But notice how I didn't say provide good answers. It considers these things to give answers. And so the opportunity, and why we're talking about prompt engineering, is because if we get better at asking or we get better at our prompts, we should be able to get better, more reliably or useful or desired results. So prompt engineering is really asking better questions with a little bit of maybe some design process thrown in. But I actually, as I was thinking about preparing for this presentation, kind of said, I've done real life prompt engineering. And that was, I had teenagers and I found teenagers that I asked questions like, how was your day? I would get fine. Or what did you do? And I would get nothing. Did you learn anything? No. And that was how we would describe the day. And they kind of looked like a sullen teenager, sort of on the left, staring at me like, why are you asking me these stupid questions? But as I got better at asking the questions, I did a little bit of prompt engineering, if you will, tell me about your day. Who made you laugh? That one almost always generated a response. Or it asked, what was the best thing that happened today? And I ended up with much more engaged teenagers and much better conversations and much better information. So for those of you that have had teenagers, you may know what I'm talking about. If you've not yet had teenagers, good luck. And maybe this will be helpful to you at some point in time. So not my real life examples, but here's some principles of that prompt engineering, where you things to think about as you're trying to create those prompts. So there's 5 big ones, I think, as you look through the research. There's clarity, so you want to be clear as possible. There's conciseness, so you don't want to give it a paragraph, but you want to be informative with the information that you ask it to provide you. I think the key is specificity. I think that's where we can make the most improvements, or I found I could make the most improvements. And then context is important as well. And I have a couple of examples of that. And then relevance. You want to make sure you're asking for the outcome that you want in designing your prompt in order to get that particular outcome. So this is like 30,000 foot view of it. Clarity, conciseness, specificity, and context. And then again, the whole idea of making it relevant to the outcome that you want. But what about the 3,000 foot level? So how can you take those principles and actually create better prompts? So here's some very practical ways to think about designing prompts and your strategies. Now I'm going to talk first about all four of them, and then I'm going to give some specific tips and hints for each one of them. So the first one is again, if you go back, it's really about clarity, right? Use specific language. So you want to clearly state what you need. So instead of saying, ask me, for example, about Copilot, you might ask how Copilot interprets user prompts. So you're really being very specific about what it is that you're looking for. And that specificity and clarity shows up a lot as you're trying to make improvement. How can I be more specific? How can I be more clear? And again, the better the question, the better your prompt, the better the information that is going to be provided to you. Another way to think about it is how do you provide the context for the question? So do you have any background information or examples or any resources that might help to anchor the prompt to get a better answer for you when you're asking it? And then define desired outcomes. So what kind of a response are you looking for? Are you looking for a summary, a list, a detailed explanation? I have some more examples of outcomes that you can ask for as well. And then I think the biggest thing I've learned is to iterate and to refine. So you can continue to test versions of your prompt and then refine them based on the responses you get. And in some ways, I think you can't break it. So you can just keep going. I've tried sometimes 3 or 4 different prompts for the same, what I thought would be the same results, but I was asking things a little bit differently, and I was getting closer and closer to what it was that I was looking for. So let's look at these 4 prompt design strategies in more detail. Now, I do want to say that there's lots of different sort of prompt design strategies. I've summarized a whole bunch into these 4, but I'm not dogmatic about almost anything. So if you have 2 that work for you, or if you teach it and you see there's 5 design strategies, that's okay. The idea, though, is how do we ask better questions? How do we create better prompts to get better results? So in using specific language, here are some of the words that you might want to use to ask the prompt. So can Copilot please compare between these 2 things or differentiate between these things? Can you recommend something? I've actually used this a lot for suggest. I've actually been planning a couple of trips lately, and I find that to ask Copilot, please suggest an itinerary for a 3-day trip to Berlin. And from there, I started to add other words to it, but it's the suggestion. I was looking for an itinerary, but I didn't know how, I didn't need it clarified yet. I didn't need it analyzed yet. So suggest has been a really useful prompt for me as I've been experimenting with prompt engineering. So the second one is context. So you want to provide enough context to help guide the response. So you can give some background information, or some examples might help to get a better answer. So here's a bad example for right now. Explain the significance of the American Revolution. Okay. Explain the significance of the American Revolution in this particular year. A better example, because I continued to add context. And a better example might be explain the significance of the American Revolution in 1776 and its impact on other countries. And then what I want to add is another way to add context is to write the word reference. And I would include the URL here. And I would say reference this article as part of what you're going to return to me. So it'll go through and it's going to read it. If you can see my air quotes, it's going to read that and include the information in that article as part of what it would return to me. Now, there's a whole lot of ways that I can make this prompt even better. And that would be to step 3, define some of my desired outcomes. So what if I wanted a list of, if you will, a list of the significance, or while you're explaining the significance, do it in a list format or paragraph format, or as a blog post, or write an essay about it. Now here, step-by-step instructions wouldn't be so helpful. Oh, I put paragraph twice, but I might ask for a summary of it. And once I've gotten something back, then I can also make some changes to it that I'll talk about later. But I can also, while I'm looking at my outcomes, I might be able to say, I want for the American Revolution example here, so explain the significance. I would like it in paragraph form, and I would like 1,500 words. And I would like it to be formal for an educated audience in the subject. And that would give it information that it would produce a different result. I could also say, oh, just list some main points about this question. I only want 200 words, make it informal, and my audience is high school students. And then also at this point for my desired outcome, I might mention in my prompt to include something and exclude something. I don't know, include a quote from Thomas Jefferson, exclude a quote from Thomas Jefferson. But I'm giving it more information about the outcome that I desire. And then finally, it's the idea of testing different versions and refining it all the time. So a bad example of this might be explain climate change. A better example, the main causes. And a better example might be the main causes of climate change, including human activities and natural factors. And again, trying out different ones, and then again, adding some different language, reference this document, what would my outcome be? Again, you can't break it, you just kind of keep trying. So here's an example of how to keep trying. So write a blog post about sustainable practices in agriculture. That's prompt 1, and it would give you a blog post with some information in it. But what if I changed it? What if I kept working at it? I said, what if I, and here's your goal or your outcome, craft, as opposed to write, different word, keep it interesting, craft an 800-word blog post with this context: general audience interested in sustainability, focusing on these particular issues, and include, again, this is both context and perhaps you want to add a specific source, but include real-world examples, innovative technologies, and insights from reputable sources. And then conclude with a reflection on the importance of these. So again, an outcome or an expectation. So I actually ran this exact prompt, and I got this. I ran the prompt, and then I copied this into a Word document. So I ran it through Copilot, and I just copied the results into a Word document. And I'm sharing with you because I could start the edit from here, or I could go back and prompt again because I didn't like something about it. And I actually did that. I reran it through Copilot, and I asked it to be less formal, and without showing you all of the results, you can see the difference between the more formal one, the one I just showed you, and the less formal one in terms of the first sentence. So again, it was the same prompt, the same answers, but I just asked it for a less formal one. And so again, it reread it and gave less formal words, and the whole approach to the blog was less formal. I could go back, I'm sure, and ask for something between those two, but you get the idea from this. So what I'm going to do here is an example of, I'm going to type in a question to Copilot. You can see the prompt area and typing in here. So I decided I wanted to know, I wanted a blog post to see if Copilot could make my job easier, right? I thought, how could I do that? So my blog post is my outcome. I've asked it to prepare one. I needed about 200 words. I gave it context, and I said, okay, let's go. And so it gave me, it said all of these things would, a way to use Copilot to streamline my different tasks. And then I said, well, man, I'm not sure I like this. Can you do this again without the list? The list came up the first time. Blog posts tend to have a lot of lists, but I didn't think that added anything to it. So I said, okay, let me do that again. And this time it created my content, and now it was more in paragraph form. So then I looked at it and I was like, all right, no, I don't like this yet. Can you add back the list but keep the first paragraph there? Make it, and all concise. I thought this was wordy. So make it more concise, add back the list, and then, because I can't type very well, keep the opening paragraph. It's terrible when people see what a bad typist you are, but there you go. And then almost instantaneously, in real time, that's what I got. And I just wanted to show that I wasn't sure what I needed. I wasn't sure what I got. Now it kind of looks like what I want. Then I can go back, dump it into a Word document, and change it up to make it more language that I would use. Then I could go back and say to Copilot, hey, can you expand on routine task? I want more information about routine task automation, this one right here. And I could keep going with that to produce that blog post. Now, there's a couple of pitfalls: vagueness or overloading, lack of context, and ambiguity. My favorite one was that I asked it to provide information about the Open Championship. It said, what are the dates for the Open? And it returned tennis to me. And I was actually looking for golf. But now when I put the Open, it learned, and it always gives me information about the Open, or what some people call the British Open, although they're pretty particular about it. So I guess what to think about is that it's really about fine-tuning your prompts, and playing, little games about what can I push here to get an answer more like what I'm looking for. Another way of thinking about it is ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer, but ask a better question and get a better answer. And then the question is, should you ask nicely? And I just want to share, I did ask, I found this because if you noticed, I've said please. I say please most of the time. I've heard that if you say please, that it will provide better, different information. And while I don't know that that's true, I did ask it for several reasons to be polite to Copilot, and it provided them. And I thought to myself, these are pretty good answers, but the idea is it kind of reminds you to think about that you're talking to another person, that image of that actual co-pilot. And it can apparently help you be more respectful in your request, which tends to get you a better answer, or at least it encourages empathy, empathy in the interaction. So while I'm not sure it changes things, I think the world could use a little bit more empathy now, and so that's the answer to is being polite to Copilot important. So that's what I had today to share with you about creating better quotes, better quotes, better prompts. And I'm happy to take any questions about it. But before I do, Angie, do you want to share what we learned about who's tried this, who's been using M365 or not?
Yes. So it's really close. We've got about 40% that are currently using it and about 45 that are not. And there is a small percentage, 15% that is using the free version.
Oh,
And we've got about 45% from accounting that are on, and IT and technical is about 35%.
well, great.
10% operations and warehouse, and 5% sales and marketing, as well as executive. So a good variety.
Well, good. So, were there any questions out there from the prompt, or were there just really good answers to the karaoke question?
Those were very good. Thank you for those who participated. We do have a question that did come through. Did you test out the please by asking the same question with or without please?
So I did test it out, and I've tested it a couple of different times. And what I don't know is has it, because I asked for it please the first time and it knows what I'm going to ask it, if I've actually affected the answer. So I'm going to try a true test by asking it in two separate browsers, maybe, or have my husband ask it, but there might not be context for that. So I don't, it's kind of like the experiment, I may have affected the answer. So that's why I asked. I'm not sure if my asking of it with and without, I'm going to get a different answer only because I've asked the question before. But if anybody wants to try that experiment, we have several more in the series and we can report back. So I, I mean, to me, it's kind of a little bit more about how it affects me than how it affects a computer. But I don't fully know. I tried to ask.
I've actually never tried that. I've
So
always just said please because I was told that you get better responses if you say please and thank you. And actually, like you said, talk to it like it's a human, say good afternoon, good morning, whatever. Um, and it just treats you nicer.
yeah. And yeah, again, I'm not sure, but like I said, I did ask it to comment on it, and I shared the comment. So um so Angie, I think this brings us right to the end of our time though. So I'll let you go from here with your information.
All right, well, I think that's all the questions that we have. If anybody has any other questions, please don't be shy. Get those into the Q&A box. As I mentioned, we do have the recording that will be coming to you tomorrow, so be checking that out. And for those of you that are not registered for our upcoming ones, be sure you get registered for the one that you want to attend. And I did pop that link in the chat for you to get registered. And I just want to thank Mary for the presentation. Always good tips. And thank you, everyone who is on, or if you're watching on demand, thank you for taking the time out to join us. Mary, do you have any last minute words you want to say before we wrap up?
No, just have fun with it. It's really going to be powerful and we're all going to get better at it. And the way to get better at it is to keep learning about it. So I'll be attending the next sessions and I'll be learning with you. So thanks for making time today.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Mary, for the presentation. And be sure to check out the events page for more of our upcoming Copilot webinar series and our future webinar events. All right. Thank you again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you soon at another Inovia webinar. Take care.